The Varathian fleet arrived like a steel storm. 3,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Their formation stretched across millions of kilometers, a wall of metal and weapons designed to crush any resistance. High Sovereign Veltharis stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Absolute Dominion. His burned face had been rebuilt with synthetic skin that glowed faintly in the dim light. His forearms gripped the command throne as he gazed at the blue-green planet that had defied him for 2 years. "Today, the insult ends," he said. "Today, humanity learns the price of defiance. All ships advance. Leave nothing alive." Admiral Tajan watched the enemy approach from his command center beneath Geneva. Every screen showed impossible numbers. Every calculation predicted total defeat. Officers around him maintained professional calm, but he could feel their fear. "Execute Plan Ragnarok," he said quietly. Across the solar system, humanity had spent 2 years preparing the greatest trap in military history. Every asteroid in the belt had been weaponized. Thousands of satellites carried planet-killer missiles. Civilian ships had been converted to automated suicide drones. The space around Earth was not a battlefield. It was a minefield waiting for someone to step wrong. The Varathian fleet advanced in perfect formation, confident in their overwhelming numbers. They passed Mars without incident. They crossed the asteroid belt, sensors sweeping for threats. They found nothing unusual, just rocks and debris exactly as expected. Then everything exploded at once. Asteroids revealed hidden engines and slammed into ships at impossible speeds. Satellites that seemed dead suddenly activated, launching missiles from every direction. Dormant mines attached to Varathian hulls detonated. The trap sprung with devastating precision. 200 Varathian ships died in the first 10 minutes. But 3,000 had arrived, and the survivors pressed forward with grim determination. Return fire turned the asteroids to dust. Point defense systems shot down missiles. The Varathians paid a terrible price, but they kept coming. Commander Huna led Ghost Squadron into the chaos. 23 fighters against thousands of ships, but they had done impossible things before. Using quantum microjumps, they appeared inside enemy formations, fired, and vanished before return fire could track them. "Target their command ships," Huna ordered. "Make them blind. Make them scared." Her fighter materialized beside a Varathian cruiser's bridge. She fired 4 missiles into the viewing ports and jumped away as the ship's command center became an inferno. The cruiser drifted, leaderless, while its crew tried to restore control. All across the battlefield, human fighters performed similar strikes. They couldn't destroy the fleet, but they could cripple it, confuse it, make every Varathian captain fear that death could appear beside them at any moment. The battle raged for 3 days without pause. Humans fought with desperate creativity. Varathians fought with overwhelming power. Ships burned. People died. Space became a graveyard decorated with debris and frozen bodies. Earth's defense fleet dwindled. 400 ships became 300, then 200, then fewer. Each loss hurt. Each death meant friends and colleagues gone forever. But they held the line because there was nowhere left to retreat. On the 3rd day, the Varathian flagship broke through the inner defenses. The Absolute Dominion was a monster of a ship, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. It had survived everything humans had thrown at it, protected by shields and armor that seemed invincible. Admiral Tajan watched its approach with cold calculation. The flagship was moving toward Earth, preparing for final bombardment. Once it got in position, the planet would burn. Everything humanity had fought for would end. "Activate Project Prometheus," he ordered. Every officer in the command center turned to stare. Project Prometheus was the planet-killer weapon, the ultimate deterrent. But its target was supposed to be the Varathian homeworld. Not used here, not now. "Sir," an officer said carefully, "Prometheus requires unanimous council approval. We can't use it without—" "I know the protocol," Tajan said. "Connect me to the Earth Council. Emergency session now." The council convened while battle raged above. 30 representatives from every nation appeared on screens, faces haggard from 2 years of war. Admiral Tajan stood before them with the weight of billions of lives on his shoulders. "The enemy flagship will reach firing position in 4 hours," he said. "When it does, Earth dies. We cannot stop it conventionally, but we can destroy their homeworld with Prometheus. Mutual extinction. If we die, they die. I need unanimous approval." Silence filled the channels. Every representative understood what he was asking. Permission to commit genocide. Permission to end billions of Varathian civilians who had never attacked Earth. Permission to become monsters. How many Varathians live on their homeworld? Someone asked. 14 billion, Dr. Borum answered. She had appeared on another screen, her face exhausted. Most are civilians, children, families. They didn't choose this war. Neither did we, Tajin replied. Neither did the 3 million who died on Luna. Neither did those we've lost in 2 years of fighting. But we're here facing extinction and we have one weapon left. Use it or die. The debate that followed was agonizing. Some argued for survival at any cost. Others refused to become genocidal monsters. Every argument was valid. Every position was understandable. There were no good choices, only terrible ones. Ambassador Minji made the final argument. If we use this weapon, we prove them right. We prove we're dangerous, worthy of extinction. But if we refuse, if we choose to die as humans rather than live as monsters, we show the galaxy what we truly are. We show them we're worth saving. The vote took 2 hours. When it ended, the result was announced. The Council had refused authorization by a narrow margin. Prometheus would not launch. Humanity would face extinction with clean hands. Dr. Borum received the decision in her laboratory. For a moment, she felt relief. She wouldn't be responsible for billions of deaths. Then she felt terror because Earth was about to die and she could have prevented it. She deleted the weapon's activation codes, destroyed the blueprints, erased everything. If humanity was going to die, at least they would die without this sin on their souls. But Ambassador Minji had been counting on this decision. She had broadcast the entire council debate live to the Galactic Assembly. Every species watched as humans wrestled with their conscience. They saw humans choose principle over survival, and something shifted in the galaxy. 17 species had been watching from shadows, preparing, waiting for the right moment. They had made secret agreements with Minji over 2 years. Now they acted. Ships began dropping out of faster-than-light travel around Earth. Not Varathian ships, not human ships. Ships from across the galaxy. Species who had decided that if humanity could choose honor over survival, they deserved to survive. The Alliance fleet numbered 800 ships, not enough to match the Varathians alone, but added to Earth's remaining defenders enough to turn the tide. Fresh weapons poured fire into exhausted Varathian ships. New fighters joined Ghost Squadron's desperate dance. High Sovereign Veltharis watched his perfect victory crumble. "How?" he screamed. "How dare they? The Assembly is neutral. They cannot interfere." "They're not the Assembly," Grand Marshal Korthas said quietly. "They're individuals, species acting on their own, and there are more coming. Sensors show additional fleets jumping in." Veltharis realized the truth. He had tried to crush one species and created an alliance against his empire. He had shown the galaxy what happened when you threatened extinction, and they had decided to stop him. "All ships," he ordered with cold fury, "ram the planet. If we cannot conquer them, we destroy them. The absolute dominion will lead. Set collision course for Earth." The flagship turned toward Earth, engines burning at maximum. The ship was massive enough that its impact would crack continents, boil oceans, end all life on the planet. Veltharis would rather destroy Earth than accept defeat. Grand Marshal Korthas stood on the bridge watching this final spite-filled order. He had served the Empire for 80 years. He had conquered worlds, destroyed fleets, and brought glory to Varathia. But this was not glory. This was madness. "No," he said. "What did you say?" Veltharis turned to face his marshal. "I said no. I will not commit suicide for your pride. I will not murder billions for your ego. This war is lost. You lost it when you underestimated humanity. You lost it when you thought conquest was easy. You lost it when you became what we claimed to fight against." Korthas drew his weapon. The guards on the bridge looked between their sovereign and their marshal, unsure who to obey. Korthas made the choice for them. "High Sovereign Veltharis, I relieve you of command for actions contrary to the welfare of the Empire." He fired once. Veltharis fell, his perfect face frozen in shock. The bridge stood in stunned silence. "All ships," Korthas announced to the fleet, "cease fire. Break off attack. We are withdrawing. The war is over." The warning came without mercy. One moment, Earth's orbital sensors showed empty space. The next moment, 3,000 massive ships appeared above the planet. They were unlike anything humans had ever built. Each vessel stretched longer than 10 city blocks covered in dark metal that seemed to swallow light itself. Admiral Tajin stood in the command center deep beneath Geneva, watching the screens with cold eyes. He was 57 years old, with silver hair and a face carved by decades of military service. Around him, junior officers whispered in panic. Tajin said nothing. He had studied alien warfare for 30 years, preparing for this exact moment. He knew what was coming. Every screen on Earth suddenly turned white. Every phone, every computer, every display showed the same image. A creature sat on a throne of what looked like crystal. It had 4 arms, pale skin like marble, and eyes that burned with purple light. When it spoke, the words came in every human language at once. I am High Sovereign Veltharis, ruler of the Varathian Empire. Your species is hereby claimed as subjects of the Empire. You will surrender all military forces within 1 solar rotation. You will provide 40% of your population for labor service. You will abandon all colonies beyond this star system. Compliance will result in your survival. Resistance will result in total extinction. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. For 3 seconds, the entire planet sat in stunned silence. Then chaos erupted. People ran through streets screaming. Governments tried to maintain order. Religious leaders called for prayer. Scientists debated whether resistance was possible. Admiral Tajin walked calmly to the communication console. He pressed a single button that connected him to every military base on Earth and every colony in human space. When he spoke, his voice was steady and cold as ice. All forces. This is Admiral Tajin. Battle stations. War protocols active. Prepare for total mobilization. We do not surrender. We do not kneel. We fight. 20 hours later, the United Earth Council met in emergency session. Representatives from every nation argued and shouted. Some wanted to negotiate. Others wanted to evacuate whoever they could. A few brave souls agreed with Tajin. We have 400 combat ships, said the Chinese delegate. They have 3,000. The mathematics are impossible. Mathematics don't win wars, Tajin replied.
Will does. Creativity does. The refusal to accept defeat does. You're asking us to sacrifice billions of lives for pride? Another delegate said. I'm asking you to refuse slavery, Tajin said. They want 40% of our population.
That's 3 billion people sent to labor camps. They want our children, our future, our freedom. If we surrender that, we're already dead. At least let us die on our feet. The vote took 6 hours. When it ended, Earth's answer was unanimous. They would fight. Commander Huna received her orders at 0400 hours. She was 34 years old, the best pilot humanity had ever produced, and the leader of Ghost Squadron. Her team of 48 pilots gathered in the briefing room aboard the orbital station. Our mission is simple, Huna said. We're going to hit their flagship. That's suicide, one pilot said. Probably, Huna agreed. But we need to send a message. They think we're weak. They think we'll break easily. We need to show them they're wrong. Who's with me? Every hand went up. Huna smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had already accepted death and found freedom in it. 6 hours later, Ghost Squadron launched. Their fighters were small, fast, and equipped, with new quantum jump drives that could make tiny leaps through space. Dr. Borum had developed the technology just 3 months ago. It was unstable, dangerous, and completely untested in combat. Perfect for a suicide mission. The Varathian fleet hung in orbit like sleeping giants. Their flagship, the Eternal Sovereign, was a mountain of metal 10 kilometers long. It bristled with weapons that could turn planets to dust. Around it, escort ships maintained protective formation. Ghost Squadron approached slowly, engines barely active, drifting like debris. The Varathians didn't even notice them. Why would they? Humans were primitives, insects not worth attention. When they were 5 kilometers away, Huna gave the order. Jump! 48 fighters vanished from space and reappeared inside the Varathian defensive formation. Alarms screamed. Weapons tried to track targets that blinked in and out of existence. Huna's fighter materialized 200 meters from the flagship's bridge and fired everything it had. Nuclear missiles tore through the command deck. Explosions ripped through corridors. Secondary detonations cascaded through the ship. The bridge of the Eternal Sovereign became an inferno. High Sovereign Veltharis survived, but 300 of his command staff died in seconds. Ghost Squadron tried to jump away. 20 fighters made it. The rest were caught by Varathian fire and obliterated. Yuna's fighter took heavy damage, but limped back to Earth space. Of her 48 pilots, only 9 survived, but the message was sent. Humans could bleed you. Humans could reach you anywhere. Humans would not go quietly. High Sovereign Veltharis screamed his rage across the communication channels. His perfect face was burned, his robes smoking. You dare? You primitive animals dare attack me? I will make an example of you that lasts 1,000 years. Grand Marshal Korthas, commander of the invasion fleet, bowed before his sovereign. What are your orders? Destroy their moon colony, Veltharis said. All of it. Every man, woman, and child. Let them watch as we turn their Luna City to ash. Luna City was home to 3 million people. It was humanity's greatest achievement beyond Earth, a gleaming city in craters where nothing should live. Farmers grew food in underground gardens. Scientists conducted research. Families raised children who had never touched Earth's soil. The Varathian bombardment began at dawn. Kinetic missiles fell like rain. Each impact released energy equal to nuclear bombs. Domes shattered. Air rushed into vacuum. Buildings collapsed. The attack lasted 4 hours. When it ended, Luna City was a crater within craters. 3 million souls gone in an afternoon. Earth watched in horror. Every screen showed the destruction. Parents saw their children die. Children saw their parents erased. The grief was total, overwhelming, crushing. But grief transformed into something else. Something cold and focused and absolutely merciless. Admiral Taijin stood before the cameras and spoke for all humanity. They think they've broken us. They think we'll surrender now. They're wrong. They just made this personal. Every human government has agreed to put aside all differences. I have been given absolute authority over our military. Dr. Borum has been given unlimited resources for weapons development. Every factory on Earth is converting to war production. Every person who can fight will train. Every mind will work toward victory. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of 3 million dead. You wanted to make an example of us. You succeeded. We are now an example of what happens when you make humanity truly angry. We will show the galaxy what we're capable of. We will burn so bright that every species will remember this war for 10,000 years. You demanded obedience. We give you flames and devastation, and we will not stop until you are broken or we are extinct. Across Earth and her colonies, billions of humans heard those words. The grief remained, but now it had direction. Now it had purpose. They had lost the first battle. They had paid in blood. But the war had just begun, and humanity had one advantage the Varathians didn't understand. Humans had been perfecting the art of war for 10,000 years. They knew every trick, every tactic, every way to make your enemy bleed. The Varathians had superior technology and numbers, but humans had something more dangerous. They had creativity, spite, and the absolute refusal to kneel. The galaxy watched nervously. Most species in the Galactic Assembly felt sympathy for Earth, but none offered help. To oppose Varathia meant destruction. Better to stay neutral and survive. But Ambassador Minji, Earth's representative to the Assembly, began quiet conversations. She spoke to minor species, those who had also suffered under Varathian threats. She planted seeds of doubt, whispered suggestions, made careful alliances that existed only in shadows. How long do you think before they come for you? She asked one delegate. If they destroy humanity, what makes you think you're safe? The delegate had no answer, but Minji saw the fear in their eyes, and fear could be useful. Fear could become courage given time and the right push. Back on Earth, Dr. Borum stood in her laboratory surrounded by the brightest minds humanity could gather. We can't match their technology, she said. So we won't try. We'll create weapons they've never imagined. We'll turn our disadvantages into advantages. We'll be unpredictable, creative, and absolutely ruthless. Ideas, people, give me ideas. The scientist began talking, arguing, building. War had come to humanity, and humanity would respond the only way it knew how. With fire, with fury, and with the absolute determination to survive. The war entered its second year. Earth's cities had changed. Every factory now produced weapons. Every park held training grounds. Children learned to shoot before they learned algebra. The planet had become one vast military camp, and its people carried the weight of constant battle. Commander Huna sat in her quarters aboard the orbital defense station, staring at a wall covered with photographs. Each picture showed a pilot from Ghost Squadron. Most of them were dead now. She had led 48 pilots on that first raid. Now only 9 remained alive, and 3 of those were too damaged to fly again. She couldn't sleep anymore without seeing their faces, couldn't close her eyes without hearing their final transmissions. The doctors called it combat stress. Huna called it the price of war. She drank her cold coffee and returned to the command center. There was always another mission, another battle, another chance to join her dead friends. The emergency alert came at 0300 hours. Huna was already awake, as always. The tactical display showed Varathian ships moving toward New Sol Colony, humanity's largest settlement outside the solar system. 200,000 people lived there in gleaming domes on a planet with purple skies. It's a major assault, the sensor officer reported. 50 capital ships. This isn't a raid. It's an invasion. Huna checked the numbers. Human forces in that sector numbered only 12 ships. The mathematics were impossible. But mathematics had never stopped her before. Prepare Ghost Squadron, she ordered. We're jumping to New Sol. Commander, even if we arrive, we can't stop 50 ships, her second officer said. We don't need to stop them, Huna said. We need to slow them down long enough to evacuate civilians. Move. The quantum jump took 3 hours. When Ghost Squadron arrived at New Sol, the bombardment had already begun. Inquisitor Vixara, the Varathian intelligence officer known for her cruelty, personally commanded the attack. She wanted to break human spirit by destroying their most beautiful colony. Huna watched on screens as missiles fell on New Sol's main dome. The structure cracked but held. Civilians were running toward evacuation transports. They needed time. Minutes. Maybe an hour if luck smiled. All fighters target their troop transports, Huna ordered. Make them worry about their soldiers instead of our civilians. Ghost Squadron dove into the Varathian formation like angry wasps. 23 fighters against 50 capital ships and hundreds of escorts. It should have been suicide. Instead, it became a masterclass in desperate tactics. Huna's fighter slipped through enemy fire using micro-jumps that appeared random, but followed patterns only she could see. She targeted troop transports, crippling engines and forcing them to abort landings. Other fighters followed her lead, each pilot pushing their damaged ships beyond safe limits. For 45 minutes, they held the Varathians' attention. 45 minutes of constant movement, constant fire, constant terror. Huna lost 8 more pilots. But those 8 deaths bought enough time for evacuation ships to escape with 200,000 civilians. When the last transport cleared orbit, Huna ordered the retreat. Her own fighter was trailing atmosphere from a dozen holes. Warning lights covered her console. But she had done it. The colony was lost, but its people survived. She returned to Earth a hero. Admiral Tajan personally awarded her the highest military honor. But Huna couldn't feel proud. She stood at the ceremony thinking only of those she hadn't saved, those 8 pilots who bought survival with their lives. That night she finally broke. Alone in her quarters, Commander Huna wept for the first time since the war began. She had been strong for so long, carrying so much weight. Now the weight crushed her, and she sobbed until she had no tears left. Dr. Borum faced her own darkness in the depths of her laboratory. On her screen glowed the plans for Project Prometheus, a weapon that could destroy entire planets. The design was elegant, terrible, and absolutely functional. It used antimatter reactions to tear apart a planet's core. One weapon could end billions of lives in minutes. Admiral Tajan had authorized its development as a deterrent, something to threaten but never use. Boram stared at her creation and felt sick. She had spent her life building things, creating technologies to help people. Now she built weapons to end worlds. What had she become? Her assistant entered the lab. Doctor, the weapon is ready for final assembly. Do we proceed? Borum hesitated. If she said no, humanity might lose its ultimate deterrent. If she said yes, she became responsible for a weapon that could commit genocide. There was no good choice, only degrees of awful. Proceed, she said quietly, but add a safeguard. The weapon requires authorization from every member of the Earth Council, not just majority vote, unanimous agreement. I won't give one person the power to end worlds. That makes it nearly impossible to actually use, the assistant said. Good, Borum replied. It should be impossible. Some weapons exist only to prevent their own use. Meanwhile, Captain Junho prepared for the most desperate mission of the war. The Ghost Fleet operation, they called it. A suicide run deep into Varathian core territory to strike at supply lines and military infrastructure. Junho stood before 300 volunteers in a hangar that smelled of fuel and desperation. These were old ships, outdated vessels pulled from salvage yards and museums. Each had been fitted with automated systems that could fly them even if the crew died. I won't lie to you, Junho said. This is a one-way mission. We're jumping into the heart of the Empire with no support, no backup, no chance of rescue. Our goal is simple, cause as much damage as possible. Force them to pull forces back from our worlds to defend their own. Some of us might survive. Most won't. He paused, looking at the young faces before him. They were volunteers, everyone. They had watched Luna City burn. They had lost families to the war. Now they offered themselves as weapons. If anyone wants to step back, now is the time. No shame in it. This is beyond what anyone should be asked to do. Not one person moved. Junho felt pride and grief in equal measure. These were the best of humanity, and he was leading them to their deaths. Then let's make them remember us, he said. The Ghost Fleet jumped 3 days later. 60 ships vanished from human space and appeared in Varathian territory, light years from any support. For 2 weeks they became legends of terror. They struck supply convoys. They destroyed military academies. They hit civilian infrastructure not to kill innocents, but to force the Empire to divert resources to protection. Every ship they destroyed was a ship not fighting at Earth. Every soldier recalled to defend the homeland was a soldier not invading human colonies. The cost was terrible. One by one, the Ghost Fleet ships fell to overwhelming enemy response. Junho watched friends die on screens, heard their final messages, and kept pushing forward because stopping meant their deaths meant nothing. When it ended, only 5 ships limped back to human space. Junho's was one of them, barely functional, held together by hope and desperation. Of 300 volunteers, 47 survived, but they had succeeded. The Varathian Empire recalled 3 entire fleet groups to defend their core territories. The pressure on Earth eased, if only slightly. The dead had bought humanity time. Grand Marshal Korthus requested an unprecedented meeting. He contacted Admiral Tajan directly, requesting negotiations under flag of truce. The 2 commanders met aboard a neutral station, surrounded by guards from both sides. Korthus was tall, covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed under the lights. His 4 arms moved with nervous energy. Tajan was shorter, older, wearing a simple uniform with no decorations. They studied each other like 2 predators unsure who was the hunter. I come to offer terms, Korthus said. A ceasefire, negotiations. You come because you're losing, Tajan replied. Your supply lines are broken. Your troops fear us. Your empire bleeds resources while we grow stronger through desperation. We have not lost. We still outnumber you. Numbers don't win wars. Will does. And you have no will left to fight. Your soldiers whisper about us in fear. They call us demons. They say we cannot be killed. That's what you're fighting, Marshal. Not ships or weapons. Fear itself. Korthus felt the truth in those words. His troops were demoralized, his supply chain shattered, his reputation damaged. This war had become a grinding nightmare that consumed everything the Empire fed into it. What terms would you accept? Korthus asked. Unconditional surrender of all Varathian forces, full withdrawal from all human territory, reparations for damages, war crimes trials for your leadership. Impossible. High Sovereign Beltharis would never agree. Then we continue, Tajan said coldly. We will fight until one of us is extinct. We will turn every planet into a fortress. We will bleed you across 1,000 worlds. And when you finally break, when your empire collapses under the weight of this war, humans will be there to watch it burn. The meeting ended. Korthus returned to his fleet shaken. Tajan returned to Earth grim. There would be no peace, not yet. The war would continue until someone broke. High Sovereign Veltharis made his decision. He had tried limited war. He had tried overwhelming force. Now he would commit everything. The entire reserve fleet, every ship the Empire could spare, would be sent to crush Earth once and for all. The Galactic Assembly Hall had never been so crowded. Representatives from every known species filled the vast chamber, their voices creating a sound like distant thunder. At the center, a tribunal had been established to decide the fate of the Vorathian Empire. Grand Marshal Korthas stood in the accused position, his ceremonial armor replaced by simple prison garments. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by defeat. Around him, holographic displays showed evidence of war crimes, burning cities, dead civilians, systematic destruction. Admiral Tajin sat among the judges representing humanity. He had aged visibly in the months since the war ended. His silver hair had gone completely white. Lines on his face seemed carved deeper, but his eyes remained sharp, missing nothing. Many species demanded harsh punishment. Dissolution of the Empire. Execution of all military leadership. Reparations so severe they would cripple Vorathia for generations. The calls for revenge were loud and passionate. Then it was humanity's turn to speak. Everyone expected humans to demand the harshest punishment. They had suffered most. They had lost millions. They had earned the right to vengeance. Admiral Tajin stood and addressed the assembly. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the vast hall. We could destroy them, he said. We could scatter their people, erase their culture, make them suffer as we suffered. Many humans want exactly that. But I ask this assembly to consider what we would become if we did. He paused, letting the silence build. During the war, we were offered a weapon that could destroy their homeworld. We refused to use it, even knowing it meant we might die. We chose to remain human rather than become monsters. That choice should guide us now. We propose that the Vorathian Empire remain intact but demilitarized. Their military will be dismantled and rebuilt under galactic supervision. They will pay reparations, yes, but reasonable ones. And humanity offers to serve as peacekeepers during their transition, helping them build a society based on cooperation instead of conquest. The hall erupted in shocked debate. Many thought humans had gone mad. Others saw the wisdom and mercy. The discussion lasted 3 days. Finally, a compromise was reached that followed humanity's basic proposal. Commander Huna testified about the war's battles. She spoke calmly, factually, describing tactics and outcomes. But when asked about Marshal Korthas specifically, she surprised everyone. He followed orders, she said. Soldiers do that. The rot started at the top with Veltharis. Korthas ended the war when he could have let it continue. He saved Earth by stopping that final attack. I won't defend what he did during the war, but I'll acknowledge what he did to end it. Korthas looked at her with something like gratitude. He was still sentenced to imprisonment, but the charges were reduced. He would serve time for his crimes, but he would live. Back on Earth, Dr. Borum stood in a laboratory that looked very different from her wartime workspace. Instead of weapons, she now designed systems to rebuild destroyed colonies. Medical technologies, agricultural improvements, tools for peace instead of war. Her assistant found her staring at an old datapad containing the erased blueprints of Project Prometheus. She kept it as a reminder, encrypted and locked, accessible only to her. Why do you keep that? The assistant asked. So I never forget what I'm capable of, Borum replied. I created something that could end worlds. I need to remember that line I almost crossed. It keeps me honest. She returned to her work using the same brilliant mind that had created weapons of devastation to now create tools of renewal. The work was slower, less dramatic, but more fulfilling. Every day she built things instead of destroying them was a day she felt more human. Captain Junho faced different challenges. Many soldiers who had fought under him struggled to return to civilian life. They had spent years fighting, killing, surviving. Peace felt strange and uncomfortable. Some couldn't adjust. Junho created the Ranger Corps, an organization dedicated to protecting frontier colonies from pirates and criminals. His former soldiers found new purpose. They were still fighters, still defenders, but now they protected instead of destroyed. He visited Mars, where he had led the resistance for months. The tunnels he had hidden in were being converted to museums. Children took tours, learning about the war, about sacrifice, about the price of freedom. A young Vorathian child approached him. part of a cultural exchange program. Were you scared? The child asked. During the war? Unyo knelt to the child's level. Every day, he said honestly. Fear is normal. What matters is what you do despite the fear. Ambassador Minji became a central figure in forming the new Galactic Alliance. Unlike the old assembly, this alliance had actual power, military cooperation, economic integration, shared defense agreements, and at its heart stood humanity. The species that had proven resistance was possible. Earth became, reluctantly, the military backbone of the alliance. Human tactics were studied by every species. Human weapons were analyzed and improved. The galaxy had learned that when pushed to the edge, humans would fight with creativity and determination that made them formidable beyond their numbers. But humans also became known for something else: mercy. They had chosen not to destroy the Varathians when they could have. They had offered peace instead of revenge. This combination of strength and compassion made them respected in ways conquest never could. Commander Hyuna took a position training new pilots at the military academy. She was only 40 years old but felt ancient. Her students were young, eager, full of confidence. She tried to teach them what war really meant. Flying is easy, she told them. Shooting is easy. The hard part is living with what you've done. The hard part is seeing your friends die and continuing anyway. The hard part is winning and realizing victory doesn't feel like you imagined. In her office, she kept a wall covered with photographs. Every pilot who had served in Ghost Squadron. Most were dead now. She looked at their faces every morning before classes, remembering what they had sacrificed. One student asked about the memorial. Do you regret it? The war? Every day, Hyuna said. But I don't regret fighting. We had no choice. What I regret is that we were forced to choose it all. Admiral Taejin retired from active service. He was offered positions in government, ambassadorships, prestigious roles that would use his experience. He declined them all. Instead, he became a teacher and a writer. His history of the war became required reading across the galaxy. He wrote honestly about victories and failures, about clever tactics and terrible mistakes. He didn't portray humans as heroes or villains, just as people doing their best in impossible circumstances. We won because we refused to quit, he wrote, but winning cost us parts of ourselves we'll never get back. Remember that when you think war is glorious. Glory is a word used by those who weren't there. 10 years after the war ended, a memorial was erected in orbit around Luna, where 3 million had died. It was a massive structure, visible from Earth, covered with names of every human killed in the conflict. At its center, an inscription in every known language. They demanded obedience. We chose freedom. May no one ever face this choice again. The dedication ceremony was attended by representatives from across the galaxy. Varathians came too, many of them young people born after the war. They stood beside humans in shared grief, mourning losses on both sides. One young Varathian approached an elderly human veteran. "Why did you fight so hard?" she asked. "Why not just surrender?" The veteran thought carefully before answering. Because some things matter more than survival. Freedom matters. The right to choose your own path matters. We fought for that right. Same right you're exercising now by being here, by asking questions, by thinking for yourself. 20 years after the war, the galaxy had changed in fundamental ways. The old power structures had collapsed. The idea that might made right had been challenged and defeated. Humanity spread among the stars, not as conquerors but as partners. The Varathian Empire had transformed into a peaceful federation. Their warrior culture had been channeled into exploration and science. Young Varathians studied at human universities. Humans served on Varathian merchant ships. Former enemies were becoming friends slowly, carefully, but the scars remained. Earth still had areas too damaged to rebuild. Luna City was never reconstructed, left as a permanent memorial. Veterans still woke from nightmares. Families still mourned those who never came home. Commander Hyuna, now in her 50s, stood at a joint military academy where humans and Varathians trained together. She watched young officers from both species working as a team and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. "This is what we fought for," she said to a fellow instructor. "Not victory. This, the chance for them to be better than we were." Admiral Taejin lived to see his 80th birthday. He died peacefully, surrounded by students and colleagues who had learned from his wisdom. His final words were recorded and became famous across the galaxy. We burned bright enough to light the galaxy, but the real victory wasn't surviving the flames. It was choosing not to let those flames consume our humanity. Remember that, please. Admiral Tijin's war room looked like organized chaos. Screens covered every wall showing fleet positions, resource calculations, and battle simulations. Officers moved between stations with urgent purpose. In the center, Tijin stood before a holographic display of the solar system, his fingers moving through data like a conductor leading an orchestra. "They expect us to fight like them," he said to his command staff. "Ship against ship, fleet against fleet. That's how civilized species wage war. But we're not civilized by their standards. We're creative, we're unpredictable, and we're angry." He pulled up a tactical display showing the Kuiper Belt, the ring of ice and rock beyond Neptune's orbit. Millions of asteroids drifted in the cold darkness. The Varathians have established a supply base here. They think they're safe because we don't have ships that far out. They're wrong. Commander Huna stepped forward, her arm still in a healing brace from the Ghost Squadron raid. "What's the plan?" "We turn their arrogance into a weapon," Tijin said. "Dr. Borum, show them." Dr. Borum brought up schematics on the main screen. She was 42 years old with dark circles under her eyes from weeks without proper sleep. But her voice was steady and clear. "We can't build enough warships to match them. So we're building something else, kinetic weapons disguised as asteroids." "Explain it simply," Tijin said. "We hollow out asteroids, fill them with fusion cores, and add small thrust engines. Then we set them on collision courses with the Varathian base. To their sensors, they just look like natural debris. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late." Yuna smiled grimly. "Space mines that look like rocks. They'll never see it coming." "That's barbaric," one officer said. "It's not honorable combat." "Honor doesn't matter when you're fighting for survival," Tijin replied. "Effectiveness does. Begin the operation." For 3 weeks, human engineers worked in secret. They used small mining drones to excavate asteroids, careful to leave the outer surface untouched. Inside, they installed fusion cores taken from decommissioned power plants. Each asteroid became a bomb with the power of 50 nuclear warheads. Huna personally led the team that calculated trajectories. The asteroids had to drift naturally, following orbital mechanics that wouldn't trigger Varathian suspicion. It was delicate work, requiring precision that left no room for error. 47 days after the Luna City massacre, the first asteroid arrived at the Varathian supply base. Sensors detected it too late. The rock struck the main station at 17 kilometers per second. The fusion core detonated on impact. The station vanished in a sphere of nuclear fire. Before the Varathians could react, 11 more asteroids slammed into their fleet. Supply ships exploded. Fuel depots ignited. Repair facilities collapsed. In less than 10 minutes, humanity destroyed resources that had taken months to establish. Grand Marshal Korthos received the damage reports in disbelief. "How? How did primitives reach our outer system base?" "They didn't use ships," his science officer reported. "They weaponized natural orbital mechanics. The asteroids were bombs." Korthos felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest. Unease. These humans didn't fight like any species he'd encountered. They fought like desperate animals with nothing to lose. But the asteroid attack was just the beginning. Dr. Borum's next weapon was even more terrifying, though it existed only as code and data. "I need a Varathian computer system," she told Tijin. "A real one with active connections to their network." "That requires capturing a ship," Tijin said. "Then capture one." 3 days later, human special forces boarded a damaged Varathian scout ship drifting near Mars. They killed the crew, took the computer core, and escaped before reinforcements arrived. The core went straight to Borum's laboratory. She worked for 60 straight hours, barely eating, surviving on stimulants and determination. What she created terrified her own team. It was an artificial intelligence virus designed to learn, adapt, and spread through Varathian networks. "This is dangerous," one scientist warned. "If it gets out of control, it could spread to our systems too." "Then we make sure it doesn't," Borum said. "But right now we need every advantage. Deploy it." The virus entered the Varathian network through captured communication arrays. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then slowly, chaos began spreading through the Empire's logistics. Supply ships received orders to deliver food to the wrong fleets. Ammunition went to bases that didn't need it while frontline units ran out. Maintenance schedules became jumbled. Ships that needed repairs got orders to deploy. Fresh ships got flagged as damaged and quarantined. The virus learned from every attempt to remove it. It created copies of itself, hid in backup systems, and corrupted data faster than Varathian technicians could restore it. Within 2 weeks, the Empire's supply chain was in complete disarray. "It's brilliant," Huna said, watching reports of Varathian confusion. "We're not just fighting their ships. We're fighting their entire infrastructure." "It's also terrifying," Borum admitted. "I created something that thinks, something that learns. If it decides we're targets too, we won't be able to stop it." "Then we win this war before that happens," Tejan said. While the virus spread, Captain Junho was fighting a different kind of war on Mars. The Varathians had captured the Red Planet after a brutal siege. They expected to use it as a forward base. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a nightmare. Junho was 38 years old, lean and hard from years of special forces training. He specialized in guerrilla warfare, the art of making enemies bleed slowly. Before evacuating Mars, he had prepared surprises for the occupiers. Every building was booby-trapped. Every tunnel had ambush positions. Every supply depot contained explosives on remote detonators. Junho and his team of 200 fighters had stayed behind, hiding in the vast underground complexes that humans had built over decades. The Varathians sent 10,000 troops to secure Mars. Within a week, they had lost 500 soldiers to attacks that came from nowhere. Fighters appeared, killed, and vanished into tunnels that seemed to go on forever. "We can't secure this planet," the Varathian commander reported to Korthus. "Every dome is a death trap. Every tunnel hides enemies. We control the surface, but they control everything underground." "Then seal the tunnels," Korthus ordered. "We've tried. They have excavation equipment. They dig new tunnels faster than we can seal old ones. And they've sabotaged our water processing, our air recyclers, our power generators. We're using more resources keeping our own troops alive than we're gaining from holding this planet." Korthus realized the truth. Mars was a trap. Humans had given it up deliberately, knowing it would become a resource drain. Every soldier the Empire stationed there was a soldier not fighting elsewhere. Every supply shipment to Mars was supplies not going to the front lines. "These humans," Korthus said to his staff, "fight like nothing I've ever encountered. They don't care about honor or glory. They care only about making us bleed." "Should we withdraw from Mars?" an officer asked. "No, if we retreat it shows weakness. We stay and we endure the cost." Back on Earth, humanity began another psychological operation. Every Varathian soldier captured received treatment that confused them. Instead of torture or execution, humans gave them medical care, good food, comfortable cells. Then humans showed them recordings, videos of Ghost Squadron's raids, footage of the asteroid bombardment, images of Mars resistance fighters appearing like ghosts, and most importantly, recordings of human civilians training, building weapons, preparing for total war. "Your empire thinks this war will be easy," human interrogators told prisoners. "Look at these images. Does this look easy? We will fight you until one of us is extinct. Every human from youngest child to oldest elder will resist. This is what you're fighting, an entire species that refuses to kneel." Then humans released the prisoners, sent them back to Varathian lines with full stomachs, healed wounds, and traumatized minds. The prisoners talked. Stories spread. Soldiers began to fear these strange creatures who fought without honor, but with terrifying effectiveness. Ambassador Minji watched from the Galactic Assembly as opinions began to shift. At first, species had pitied humanity's coming extinction. Now they watched in fascination and growing fear. If humans could resist Varathia, what did that mean for the galaxy's power structure? 3 minor species approached Minji in secret. They offered to share intelligence about Varathian fleet movements. They couldn't fight openly, but they could help in shadows. Minji accepted gratefully. The alliance was forming, slowly, carefully. "Why are you helping us?" Minji asked one delegate. "Because if you fall, we're next," the delegate replied. "At least you're fighting. You're showing the rest of us that resistance is possible." High Sovereign Veltharis received reports of all these setbacks with growing rage. His perfect conquest was becoming a grinding war of attrition. Humans were supposed to be primitive, easy to crush. Instead, they were fighting like cornered predators. "Enough," he declared. "We have been too merciful. Grand Marshal Korthus, I am sending you additional fleets. You will crush this resistance completely. I want Earth burning. I want their colonies reduced to rubble. I want these creatures to regret ever defying us.